We are moving into an expansive energy. So this teaching is about what expansion means to you as a light leader who already operates at a high log of consciousness. And by the way, all of these teachings and all of these distinctions are from the book, The Sovereign Way. Follow the link in the bio to get your copy. Now, the first distinction for us to understand is that when we talk about expansion in a sovereign way, we are obviously not confined to linear expansion of increasing followers and dollars and physical territory. And we're not even necessarily talking about expanding your reach. These things may all be byproducts depending on what truth is currently creating through you. Remember, even though you do have the power to manifest your desires, at the higher logs of consciousness, your personal desires naturally fall second to divine will, because your commitment to truth outweighs all your fleeting interests and worldly trends. This is, after all, what qualifies you for generational impact. Yes, that's what the disciples of Christ are for. That's what the Great Commission is. We're talking generational impact, legacy work. The masses in the mainstream are fickle and they will follow all sorts of shifting currents, but you are playing the greatest game in the universe, the return of Christ. For that reason, whoopsie daisy, I'll be needing that later. Since you're playing the greatest game of the universe, the return of Christ, our first distinction is this: sovereign expansion is not about horizontal territory, but vertical impact. Type that in. My expansion is vertical. Pop it in the comments wherever you are, YouTube, TikTok, here in the Oasis, write it down in your notepad. My expansion is vertical. Here's what I mean. Let's pretend that we can measure and calibrate the extent to which a human consciousness has become aware of and claimed its divine inheritance, which is I and my Father are one. Now, it's important to know that in truth, there is no up and down. There's no rush to climb any imaginary ladder of spiritual purity. And Jesus himself, the King of the universe, would never consider himself higher than even the lowliest nymph at the bottom of the pond. But for the purpose of this thought experiment, permit me to use dualistic language to imagine an ascending scale of consciousness. So here is a linear representation of increasing realizations of awareness, right? We have a greater capacity to love. We have more powerful, more powerful corresponding attractor fields of energy, electromagnetic attractor fields that magnetize and energize higher qualities of form, right? So let's dumb that down and say that the more you love, the better you manifest. So we'll arrange this idea on a scale from 0 to 1,000, with each marker in the middle reflecting any energy field's proximity to perfect truth. Here's perfect truth, and here is an electromagnetic energy field that is in some proximity to perfect truth. So, by the way, this scale is inspired by the map of consciousness that was scientifically demonstrated and presented in depth in the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins, published by Hay House in 2014. Go ahead and seek it out and study the work. But for our inquiry, we need only this idea and a few important data points. If 1,000 is Christ, a perfectly integrated I am with a pure field of love, and 0 is Antichrist, a perfectly inverted field of consciousness with no awareness of love and life. If this is I am, then this is I am not. Then all things created calibrate somewhere in between. Yes, fairly simple. Nod if you get it. Yeah. Approaching zero, right? As we approach zero, we have a consciousness that is similar to spiritual death. It's a disconnected, nihilistic life view which manifests its equivalent in energy and form. Approaching 1,000, we have enlightenment, a consciousness of ineffable unity, an experience of belonging and beauty. At 200, we have a neutral attitude towards life with very little awareness or mastery to affect the many tides of vibration in this relational world, but nonetheless, the ability to enjoy the goodness of a sunrise. Below 200, creative energy manifests as net negative. So by cognitive dissonance and the law of attraction, we get the effect of entropy. We'll call that entropy, which is a downward spiral of spiritual energy or depression, if you like. Above 200, creative energy becomes net positive. And we experience what we call ascension, a spiritual upward spiral. 500 marks the spot, the threshold that's often called the journey from the head to the heart. This is where the human mind transcends system living and becomes utterly led by love, and therefore sovereign in the natural world of particle and form. Below 500 is a linear system consciousness where cause and effect rule creative possibility. I want to expand my borders, so I have to move the lines on the map. Above 500 is non-linear quantum consciousness, where faith and synchronicity are the actualizing agents, as energetic attractor fields weave substance together at the command of love. Remember, love is sovereign over all energy forms. Ergo, it is love that commands the spirit to move the substance. And therefore, the closer we are, the closer proximity to Christ, the greater authority our energy field has to move the particles of creation. So ascension, or in this case, expansion, is the process of sanctifying your framework of consciousness and deepening your knowing that there is only one source, one spirit, and one substance, and that you and everything else are that. So the Christ field at 1,000 is already available in the collective potential, isn't it? Yes. And therefore you are always entangled with it. So since ascension also represents an increased embodiment of the knowing that I and my Father are one, the higher the log of consciousness, the greater electromagnetic attractor field, and the greater the authority to influence manifestation. For example, at 1,000, you can walk on water. The mind intends the water molecules to support the body moving through space, and the elements submit willingly. For sovereignty is over all natural universe, all the natural creation, including all the elements. So if your intention is to walk upon the water molecules will obey. At 50, you have very little influence. Life is opposed upon you. You are likely to drown. Now, wherever your consciousness logs on this imaginary scale, it is possible to make up any deficit in spiritual power by aligning with the pre-existing Christ field and following him. Now, you are not limited by your ability or your spiritual maturity, only by your faith in him who leads the way. That's why Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So the sovereign way to understand expansion energy is actually to know that it is the coordinates of your framework of consciousness that is expanding. It is your soul that is expanding, creating a more powerful electromagnetic field, more authority to influence energy and natural particle, and therefore also a greater entanglement with the world. This is the part that a lot of people don't like hearing, me included. You might have heard that the heart chakra has an electromagnetic field that expands 6 foot all around you. That is true for most people. But for you, a conscious light leader, your vibrational field expands much further than most. So do not for a second think that you get to sit in your enlightenment cave, surrounded by your perfect crystal grids and all your favorite verses, and hide away from reality to keep your vibration pure. No, you are already entangled with the world. And in your expansive energy, you will have more influence and therefore more responsibility to engage with the world. A higher electromagnetic log has greater influence and authority, and therefore by energy transfer will elevate the thought forms and attractor fields that it comes into contact with, that it engages with. Shall I say that again? You have a very high log of consciousness. That means you have a very high field of electromagnetism, if you like, which means whatever you come into engagement with, you will elevate that, you will sanctify that. So you do very little good sitting in your enlightenment cave praying to the spirit. It is when you're in engagement with the others, with the world, that's when you get to participate with the alchemy of collective expansion. So you are not only expanding, you are also expansive. Type that in. I am expansive. Second distinction for today, along the same lines. Understand conquest versus engagement. Keep watching. And by the way, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the TikTok channel for full teachings and to follow more high spiritual philosophy for light leaders. And all these teachings are in the book. They're unwrapped in this book, The Sovereign Way. You can follow the link in the bio to go and buy it. So, expansion by conquest versus expansion by engagement. Did you know that it was actually the bloody violent Christian crusades that brought the goddess movement to the West? It's true. Check it out. Now, the Crusades were a gruesome time of expansion by conquest. These were military expeditions to go out to the east and rip the Holy Lands from Muslim life and leadership. So landowners and knights were forced to sell their land to the system to pay for these expeditions abroad. And then they were recruited to those missions and they didn't have much choice. It was either that or stay in the bleak reality of dwindling crops and poverty. And P.S., by the way, the church will absolve all your sins if you go out on these crusades to conquer and take opportunities to establish the reality that the status quo says is correct. More of the same, linear, horizontal expansion. But each crusader was not the church. He was a man who had once been a boy. And when the Crusades arrived in the faraway lands, each man encountered an energy that he had never experienced. The goddess. For in these cultures, she was very much alive. Arabic poets and the great Sufi mystics would write stunning odes to the woman, the divine feminine beclothed in fragrances and spices, a tender reverence for the wild movement of spirit, the mother and the sisters and the daughters of God. And in the consciousness of our men, this new discovery fused with a pre-existing magical twilight world of the medieval Celtic legend. And the alchemy that resulted was an irresistible fantasy genre, which fired the imagination of all of Europe, and the Crusaders were infected with romance. It triggered a radical concept for the era, that of service to women. Queens and princesses and noblewomen heard how women were worshipped and revered, and this is how the movement of Romanticism first began. Everywhere, poetry clubs and women's societies began blossoming like buds on the vine. Even the establishment of the court of love and codes of conduct of knightly honor. So the divine feminine began rising in the West, and she has been ever since. This is expansion by engagement. It doesn't matter how the system tries to bribe you to expand its borders by conquest. And it doesn't matter how the system tries to conquer you and expand its borders into you. Spirit expands by engagement, and nothing can stop her. So with the Crusades, the church with the little c tried to win, tried to expand its linear area and the currency and the numbers and the followers and the bosshood. But church with a capital C did win, as the mystical energy of true love and sovereign freedom spreads like a flame to a flame, burning down old paradigms and igniting the passion of the human spirit, liberating love to do what it does best, flourish. So this week, as we are immersing in the energy of expansion, your mission is to be acutely discerning of two energies, conquest and engagement. How do you intend to participate with the expansion energy this week? Type it in, conquest or engagement, you choose. When you review your business goals and tactics, conquest or engagement. When you tend to your relationship and your family goals, conquest or engagement. When you consider your political stance, conquest or engagement. And see if you can catch yourself trying to reduce someone else's authority in order to impose your own. We all fall for that. We all try to do that. See if you can catch yourself. And don't forget to buy the Sovereign Way book to unwrap this even further. So the game is, allow the expansion of your territory, your products, your services, your businesses, your models, your methodologies, your philosophies, your works of art. Let them manifest with you, not by you. Your job as a co-creator is to engage with what is emerging through simple, innocent steps into something new. Perhaps he will put on your heart to learn a new song. Perhaps he'll take you across new dreamscapes at night. Perhaps he will show you a new combination of spices and herbs that are already waiting in your spice rack. Or perhaps he will open your ears to new sounds and harmonies that are already playing in your garden that you've never heard before. Perhaps he'll prune away another silly habit that's taking up way too much expansion energy. The first thing to do to enter this state of expansion is to release any idea that you're not where you're supposed to be. Ooh, that's difficult. At your high log of consciousness, now remember, I know who I'm speaking to here. You're not a beginner. This isn't kindergarten here. You're operating at a very high log of consciousness, a great deal of spiritual maturity. Ergo, if it isn't manifesting for you, then it isn't for you. This is a really uncomfortable idea for anyone who has trained themselves to see every external obstacle as some reflection of some internal incompletion. Do you do that? Do you go, oh, it's an obstacle, therefore I haven't healed this wound or completed this challenge or this other thing that I must now complete in order to get the thing that I think I want? It's if you see every struggle as an invitation to muscle up and grow more, or if you've trained yourself to think that sovereign co-creation means you have to visualize an outcome and then make it manifest, it can be very hard then to release the idea that you're not where you're supposed to be. Now, those things may be true in the early days of awakening, when we think everything out there is a reflection of what's in here, and we're first practicing mind over matter. Then we do get to manifest the red Lamborghini anytime we want. We do get to take every obstacle as some sort of deep inner wound. But for you, it's time to elevate that understanding and get that the reflection of you is only on the surface. The body of water that you're peering into is much, much deeper than your reflection. Listen, this is John 15, verses 1 to 5. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. Whoever abides in me as I in him, he bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Again, that's John chapter 15, verses 1 to 5. So for true sovereign expansion, in Christ, you focus on nothing but what is before you, and you recognize it by your core values. And then your imperfect attention and clumsy but well-meaning action become the very service that helps liberate the collective consciousness. Maybe your next move for expansion really is make a curry using slightly different spices than you normally would. Maybe the best thing you can do for humanity right now is see if you can identify a new kind of bird in your garden. He is the vine, and for the sake of this next metaphor, you are a grape. And you say, I hold within me the seed potential of great and glorious vineyards that will one day stretch across the hills and vales as far as the eye can see, and I will make the finest wine in all the lands. But what you don't do then is go and try and earn the money to buy 100 acres for your vineyards and a ton of timber and concrete to build the vast wine pressing factories. Yes, it is indeed true that all the vineyards in the universe are contained in the DNA, in the seed, inside your juicy grape belly. But if you now separate yourself from the vine to attempt to go and create that vast vision, which is not in its season, then you will fall to the ground, little grape. You will be trodden on by a goat, eaten by a turtle dove, and then pooped out again somewhere over a rocky canyon where your seeds may sprout for a little while, but they will be competing with the weeds of the wild and quickly strangled. It's a dramatic end. And that's just what it's like beyond the borders of the oasis, outside of Christ, off the vine. You try to dash out and be like a god out there in the desert, where reality is a cosmic energy field of zillions of adamantine particles in shifting thought forms and attractor fields that you're not in control of. Stay. Stay in the vine. Abide in the vine and let the vine dresser work. You will organically expand into greater and deeper authority and impact, more steadfast love, more graceful ability to manifest new territories and structures as you go along. You don't yet need to buy 100 acres and a ton of concrete to build the wine pressing factories for your empire of vineyards. All you need now is a little stick of bamboo and a nice bit of twine to hold your seedling against the winds. Type this in. I am in the vine. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to buy your copy of The Sovereign Way. Thank you for liking and subscribing on YouTube and TikTok and anywhere where you find the Sovereign teachings. Blessings upon you and glory to the One. Now to the Oasis to study. Welcome back into the group, my friends.